Yeah, Brian, talk to me. It's a good win, a good win this side, and a really good comeback and a really good second half. I imagine generally pleased with what you saw on Sunday.
Yeah, I thought we dominated the game, but the scoreline didn't reflect that at half time because of a few anomalies that we were responsible for. And we're walking down the stairs with Green, he's just saying to him, "Oh, I can't believe we're behind on the scoreboard." But there's some lessons to learn from that. There are reasons for that, and they're a good team with this, so it's important that we recognise who we're playing and what they're capable of.
How pleased are you with that ability? We saw it in the Cup and League against Sheffield and in the league against Widnes. You've bounced back from tricky positions. You've played like Sheffield. You played well in parts, been let them through for a burst of tries, then roared back and won well. Widnes same didn't concede a point in the second half to going in behind. I imagine that resolve must please you. Or do you not see it that way as resolve per se?
I think we're a good team, and I think when we play well, that's obvious. I think we can play games a whole lot easier than we're playing them. We shouldn't need to be able to play catch up. When we've got our head on, we can dominate games, but we have those moments when we don't dominate games, and there's lots of reasons for that, different reasons. They're certainly mentally tough enough, because to come back in that manner suggests that they know the way forward. But yeah, it's about putting together complete performances, and I think that's what we're striving to do now. We understand that when we're good, and when we clock off a little bit, we're not so good. So we have to alter that.
Yeah, and I guess that is an issue you've identified, because we saw it. That's the Sheffield and Widnes where you play really well for the most of the game, but there might be 10-15 minutes where out of nowhere they might run through for 2 or 3 tries. I guess that's something that is key. 'Cause like you said to Simon and Mick, 20 points in a game, it's not particularly sustainable if you want to win every week.
Well, the reasons for those momentum swings we've identified. We know what they are, and so we have to work on eradicating those things, because when the bigger games come for us now at the end of the season, that's going to be very important, and so it's important that we address it now.
And obviously it was really good to get straight back on the horse after York. You mentioned residue after the game, but you never felt it was going to make Oldham bounce back really well as well. Never felt that you'd sort of have any trouble or any hangover from that semi-final.
Yeah, I still think there was a little bit there. Yeah. Back end of the week before we saw the kind of team that we want in practice. So yeah, I think you've got to do. I don't know what the other alternative is, and our only competition now is the league, and we want to be respected as probably the best team in the league, and to do that you have to win more games than you lose, and play constantly well over 80 minutes in difficult circumstances. So that's what we've got to learn to come to terms with.
You mentioned the 80 minutes point. It is a good point. It's a physical, grueling game, rugby league, but we've seen that Bulls are going on strong right to the end of games. Like, no one's going to give up, but that must please you, the fact that Matty G was up for a last gasp try. We've seen it in lots of other games. That must please you that this team never seemed to let up right until the very end.
Yeah, and it's important that you play for 80 minutes, because that's how long the game lasts. So I've always been an advocate of that, and you can amazing what you can do in a few minutes to change a game. I've seen so many games change in 5-10 minutes, and so it's important that you apply yourself as best as you can all of the time.
We saw Joe and Evan come out, which was really good to see, both great players and served this club really well. When Pitler come back from a few weeks out injured, do you find there's ever any lingering sort of doubts about them getting a knock to that area, or is that something you just wouldn't survive in rugby league if, say, it was like, oh God, I've done my leg, I've done my finger, I've done my arm, I've done my knee, and I'm back on, oh God, what if it happens again? Is that not sustainable for a player to sort of almost have that mindset?
You can't think that way.
Yeah.
When you pick somebody, you've got to be confident that they're going to get through 80 minutes of football.
And they've got to be confident.
And they've got to be confident as well. Otherwise they wouldn't be in. And sometimes you've seen, historically over the last few years, people have not quite made the mix for that exact reason. And so it's important that we follow the medical advice as well as how the player feels and how they're training.
You had to take some medical advice and leave James out with a slight wrist injury. Obviously, it's not a luxury you've had for a lot of the season, having the selection between Joe, Jimmy and Jordan. Is that potential possibility this week, and how exciting is that when you've potentially got all three of them fully fit again?
Yeah, it's what we wanted at the start of the year. I think the added spicy bit now is that Jordan's playing really well in the halves, and we have two competent nines, in Mitch Suter and Tyrone Ott, and Sam Ellis has done a brilliant job there. So there's certainly competition for places in the halves. And and that's the way we need it.
How is Jimmy's wrist now?
I think it's okay. I haven't checked tonight, but I think it was only a week situation.
I've seen George and Tom in the corridor, and they're certainly moving a lot better than they were sort of a month ago. How hard those two are doing, we've sort of almost not mentioned them because they've been so long term, but where are they at now?
As I said last week, I think Tom's still a couple of weeks away,
Yeah.
and I think George is 6-7 weeks away, maybe more. I don't know. I think it's they're not imminent. Put it that way.
Yeah. And obviously, Doncaster made a slow start, but they feel like they've been a bit transformed by that win over Toulouse. They've had 2 really good wins in a row. Is it a team that you looked at and felt they always had that in them, or have they made real changes over the last couple of months to improve as a side, do you feel?
Well, they're a good team, and they've got some good players that are playing well now, and so it's as tough a fixture we've had this year, especially at that place. They'll come firing. They'll be very, very ready. So it's important that we recognise as a group that this is up there, with Oldham, Halifax. They are. I don't think resurgence is the word for Doncaster. I think they've found their legs, and their players are playing well.
It's going to be a tough away day there. Have you got any fresh worries in terms of injury and then going into that, or has everyone sort of come through from last week okay? Are there some problems?
No, as far as I'm concerned, everybody's okay. There were a couple that were off feet on Monday, but we don't do much on a Monday anyway. But I'm not aware of any injuries now.
And just a final one, Brian, you mentioned those away games like them, but you did really well and you won them all, and it's been 3 months going Doncaster since you've lost away in the league, and that was to lose. Is that ever anything you look at, that run of away, or is it a case of just one game at a time and you can't look at what you've done in the past away from home going into another game away from home?
Yeah, there's no given. You can't just say, right, we're away from home, we're going to win. It's ridiculous. You have to prepare for what they throw at you. And the results have been on the back of being ready and understanding what the opposition do. Now, if we still buy into that principle, we're a chance, but they're a chance of playing really well as well. So, we've got to be on our game and mentally on our game. And if we are, we'll be all right.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Brian.
Pleasure.
Brian, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Michael.
You mentioned post-match about the need to eliminate those self-harming errors. Can you pinpoint any specific areas that you've looked to address and how you're planning on addressing those?
Yeah, I can with the team. I don't really want to share that with you because it's in-house. We know what they are and we'll resolve them. And I have to say that along the way, when they have been pointed out, we've resolved them. We improved in many respects in some things we were trying to prove on from the week before. But I don't want to be tipping up the opposition.
No, that's fine. I did kind of preempt that kind of response, but you've talked about building with the squad as the season progresses. How important is that culture of accountability to you? To resolve these small self-harming errors, moments, 1%ers where it might result in a repeat, an exchange of possession from Bradford to the opposition.
Well, you have to point them out, and that means you have to point them out to the person or persons that are responsible. And they're a great group. They understand that it's not about individuals, it's about whoever happens to be playing that position if they should encounter the same situation. And so that's why we're all accountable. The coaches are accountable. If we haven't got something right, we put our hands up and say perhaps we pulled the wrong lever there. But certainly the players understand that all of the advice that we give them and all the suggestions that we make are on the back of a care of getting better each week. All of us want to get better each week.
And how do you balance that focus on reducing those errors whilst, I guess, maintaining, Bradford's flair and creativity in attacks? I'm kind of guessing it is quite a fine balance.
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. The way we play is the way we play. We think the majority of it is low risk if we get it right. So we're happy with the way we go about our business. Some of the business that we do is tough, and the opposition have a say in how you go about it. So you have to reflect on that too. But I think we've got a group that understands that sometimes it's individual errors, sometimes it's group errors, sometimes it's something tactical or technical that we haven't quite grasped, but they actually do take it on board and we go about putting it right. Whether we do put it right, it'll remain to be seen at the end of the year.
And just on that, attacking that flair creativity, how pleased are you, Brian, with the attack so far in this season, especially when you look that Bradford are the Championship's top point scorers, even at this stage with 3 or 4 teams still not having had a bye weekend, and they've also scored the most tries more than anyone else.
It's nice, but I look at the other side of the fence, and if we'd have defended a whole lot better, we'd have been top of the league on points difference. So, and probably been in more games. It's a fight. You can't play one without the other, and I've learnt that all over the years, that you've got to be good at both, and they complement each other, and they directly reflect of how you go about the business and how you score your points.
Is it fair to say then that you're looking for a more finer balance with, whilst the attack is currently the top of the Championship, you want a bit more focus on that defensive solidity, which I think the side showed a lot last season?
I think it's coming. I think it's not a difficult question. You don't do one without the other. I'll go back to my previous answer. It's important that you practice both, and you're good at both, because it's become the end of the year, you've got to be able to defend your chokers, no doubt about that. So it's important that we apply ourselves. We don't have much time with the players, so the balance of what we do and what we don't do is affected there. But there's no doubt that we're not probably. Well, we are. Some of our mistakes have been self-inflicted, as we've talked about. I think we know what we're supposed to do. I think it's a question now of applying ourselves.
Mitch Suter and the energy game, Brian. How pleasing, how important is it that you've got a player like Mitch Suter who can pretty much play 78, 79 minutes and manage that energy, which enables you to have probably a different kind of option on the interchange bench, so you're not having to have that second interchange hooker?
Well, we had that the weekend. Sam Alice can play 9. Yeah, it's very important, but all of our players have to be fit for the role, and whilst certain players are, I don't know, inverted commas, impact players and don't go around for as much as others, it's important that we've got the ability to use our 8 changes as best as we possibly can.
It was Jordan and Joe in the halves for the first time this season. What were your thoughts on that partnership, Brian?
Yeah, I was pleased that Joe had a couple of runs. I think he's what's been missing from his game. I think he looked exciting, and I think he held off the opposition, and he came up with a couple of try passes as well, which helped. Jordan's energy, as always, on that right side is tactile, isn't it? You can feel it. And so there's competition for places, but we knew that at the start of the year. That hasn't changed. Because
of the injury adversity and everything that's happened, Brian, do you still, at this stage, as we head to Doncaster and what I think is the 17th competitive game, do you still have a very strong, firm idea what your strongest 17 is, or has there been some surprises along the way as we're towards the halfway point that might have changed that perception? Not really. I'm pretty confident in what I think we're going to throw out there if we possibly can. Form dictates that as well too. People do have lulls and dips in form, so you've got to take account of that. But is there room for anybody else in the squad? Perhaps, still. So we have to look at that too. I know you've kind of answered this with Nathan, but are we expecting much change to the 21-man squad this week? I know you said James Meadows he'll be checked later on this evening. He might be back from his wrist injury. Yeah, we'll have a look, definitely. It's important we put our strongest group of people together. Yeah, I'll say about that. Yeah. On Sam Ackroyd, Brian, he went to Keighley, but he's not featured in their last 2. He did play the other evening for Bradford reserves. What's the latest with Sam? Has he come back to Bradford, or is he still at Keighley? Yeah, I think he's back with us at the moment. I think Keighley are going through a bit of change. A new coach, which is the element of change. So they're looking at everybody and what everybody can do and can't do. And at the moment in time, I think Sam's back with us. Something that I've not really mentioned much this year with Brian is like discipline and suspensions. Obviously, Elliot Paposhi had that 2-game suspension, but that aside, how pleased are you with that aspect of Bradford's game this season? Because I think at this stage last season, I was looking at it this morning, Bradford had 9 players suspended for a total of 16 games, which is unbelievable what Eamon had to deal with. But the fact is, there's only been Elliot Paposhi for 2 games. You must be absolutely delighted that learning curve, maturity is shining through in that department.
Well, I think Elliot was unfortunate, truth be known. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be a disciplined team, as we said at the start. You've got to be a positive team, which we are. You've got to win most of the battles that are statistical, if I could say it. So, yeah, the discipline's very important to us, and I think what you're seeing is a reflection of that.
Do you think there's a little bit in, after what happened last year, a bit of carryover, knowing how important it is to stay on the sort of right line? You know, if you're going to show aggression, make sure it's controlled, so you know you're not getting sent to the sin bin or in front of the match review panel.
I think it's important that lesson's taken on board, because it damages the team. Penalties damage your team, or penalties that are not warranted, kind of thing. So, yeah, discipline's massively important to get to where we want to be. Discipline, not just of the penalty count and who's in the sin bin, but discipline to be in the right place at the right time. Discipline to understand your role. Discipline to know what you're supposed to be doing and what you're not supposed to be doing. That's discipline for me.
What are your expectations for this trip to South Yorkshire on Sunday, Brian?
A tough game. Yeah, I think they're a better football team than when we played them early in the year, and they ran us close early in the year. We're going to have to be good. You
look at Richard Horne and Doncaster, certainly in their sort of like last 5, you know, they've had some big results. Certainly the last 2, the 30 points to 6 win at Halifax, and then a very good, strong performance against London.
Yeah, they're a good team. You know, they play good football. I know Horne, I've known him a lot of years. I know how he goes about his business, and I know how determined they are to do well. And those are all the ingredients. There'll be lots of reasons why they want to do well against us as well. So they've knocked off number 1, they want to knock off number 2 now. So we just got to make sure we compete the way that we compete, and we'll be in the game.
And it's quite an impressive stadium facility.
Yeah.
A very, well, looking at the weather forecast, it's going to be dry, so a big fast track to potentially, you know, create and exploit.
Yeah, well, we go okay on a fast track as well, and on a big track, so I don't think that will intimidate us. So we've got some answers to that, but I'm sure they're going to throw them at us, and if we don't answer them properly, we could be in a tough day.
When you go back to last season, I've just been speaking to Joe Keys, and when you go back to last season, when he was at Halifax, he had a 1-point win there, and you know, we all remember what happened with Bradford's game there last season. It was a real roll, you know, arm sleeves up. It was 4-0 for 65 minutes.
Yeah.
Are you expecting more of the same, literally work hard for every point?
Definitely, yeah.
I know you've referenced, Brian, about the desire to clean up the errors and, you know, learn to dominate games for the whole 80 minutes. How realistic is that expectation to you? Because I've spoken to Joe Keys, and he thinks that the side are very nearly there. They're just letting themselves down with those 1%ers.
Yeah, it's a good observation. It will come. When it comes, I'm hoping it's sooner rather than later. But, you know, I think they're getting used to what everybody wants, and that's the team, not just the coaching staff. We understand the kind of performance we want and what it'll take to be successful this year. So we understand we've got rooms for improvement, and as I said from day one, we'll take it game by game. I think possibly this game.
And just finally, Brian, we are heading towards the halfway point of the season. You've answered the club's SOS. You've come back. How are you finding it personally? You know, adapting. You know, being back in that sort of coaching hot seat. You know, dealing with us weekly press conferences.
It's great. I've got a great coaching staff. You know, and I've got some idiots to deal with, as we've seen. Well, that comes with the territory. With some strange questions now and again. But Lee Greenwood's outstanding. You know, Keith added to the mix, Chris off. So we get on along as well. So we throw everything around, we put it into the melting pot, and then come out with some answers that we think are right. We've got a great group of players that want to listen and want to be successful. So there's a good ingredients. There's been a lot of soul searching going on at the club for the last three years or such, and a lot of change in personnel and a lot of change in staff. And I thought stability this year was the right answer. And I think they've got that, and I think we're seeing the results of that. So, yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's still don't like losing. Nobody does, and that fuels the fire quite a lot. But I enjoy it when the players play well and we put on a good performance.